Train Hot Dog, the podcast where I talk to myself on a train. Today we're going to be talking vomiting on airplanes and why we don't do it as much anymore. The primary question being, are pilots better at flying in such a way that will make passengers barf less, or are passengers just less barfy than they were 50 years ago? Are passengers less come on. Are passengers less barfy? Batty? No. Barfy. Barfy. Bay Area hiker. Big Basin Redwood State Park buzzards. Passengers are reported to the southern leg of 236 is less barfy. That's good to know. Big Basin Redwoods. 13 hours, 26 passengers, norovirus, 8 toilets. Those numbers don't look good. Barf bags on airplanes. Our rates of air sickness is declining. Is Wither the barf bag? Is airborne vomiting in decline? I threw up on a plane once. It's not my favorite travel memory, but one that came up during a recent flight when I noticed that the seatback pouch in front of me was ill-equipped. SkyMall catalog, check. In-flight magazine, check. Plastic lined receptacle for human vomit, whereabouts unknown. This was not the first time my barf bag had gone missing. Now I have the queasy sense that these precious items may be in decline. I have no proof of this assertion, but anecdotes abound. Some friends and colleagues tell me they've had the same experience. Fewer bags on flights, they claim nothing like the old days. In her latest online special, comedian Chelsea Peretti describes the same experience when one airline left her not holding the bag at 30,000 feet. She threw open the seat pocket. Could this be another way for corporate bosses to save money? The major carriers, for their part, deny. I tried representatives at American, Delta, JetBlue, Southwest, and United. All said their crews still place bags in every seat on every flight, just as they've always done. Any bagless pouch would be the exception, not the rule. It's certainly possible the sickness bag would seem less common, like to those who rarely seek them out. If I'm seeing bags less often than I was a kid, maybe that's because I'm less susceptible to nausea now, and not prone to bouts of pouch exploring boredom. That's actually a really good hypothesis. You're not totally bored on the plane because you're checking your games on your phone. Perhaps the bags are still around, but barf is on the wane. Experts share my sense that we're going through a great transition. It's been years since I've seen an air sickness bag being used, said Steve Silberg, owner of more than 2,500 unique specimens and one of the world's most active air sickness bag collectors. Bags are less common than they used to be, agreed Paul Mundy, another major baggist based in Germany. Baggist is a link. I'm clicking on the link. Bagophily. Welcome. This is what my wife calls a bunch of stupid jokes and pictures of paper bags. She's right about the jokes. She's wrong about the bags. Some of them are plastic. What the critics say, utterly unnotable. Wikipedia editor. Ridiculous collections number 4. BuzzFeed. A complete waste of time go. It's a very high quality, complete waste of time, and entirely dispensable. The source of inane comments about trivial subject. A monument to the planet's worst corporate design. Unwelcome reminder of some of the more unpleasant moments in our lives. Reading that, the page just refreshed to okay, this is like a forum for bag collectors. There's a bag gallery, bag news. There's a Yahoo group. Oh, a bunch of bag brand names. That's cool. The last one I saw, a passenger had to ask for it. It's the only one I've seen in 10 years, said Brent Blue, a senior aviation medical examiner and member of the Aerospace Medical Association. Air sickness is almost unheard of, said Bob van der Linden, an aviation expert at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. Fewer passengers are joining the Bile High Club. Oh, that's not bad, actually. I like that one. The airlines must know all about it. I'm guessing they keep track of bag replacement costs and thus have some idea whether air signature rates are changing, but they keep those numbers secret. One company rep told me it would raise issues of medical privacy to share any such information. So we're left to sort through public data, which there isn't much. The best numbers I could find come from a survey published in 2000 of about 1,000 people on 38 commercial flights. 1.5% said they'd vomited on the plane, and 8.4% reported feeling nauseated. Common sense suggests that numbers were much higher in the past. Before the invention of the pressurized cabin, pilots could not fly at calm altitudes above the weather. Early planes were small and light by today's standards, so they bounced around more in turbulence. The engines also made a racket and bathed the cabin in exhaust fumes. These problems gave rise to a brand new medical condition first diagnosed by a pair of researchers from Bordeaux in April 1911. All progress is at a price. Man pays a ransom for each of his adventures. That's gorgeous. That's poetry. Air sickness, its nature and treatment. Here's a paper on archive.org. Or OCR'd terribly because there's all these weird accent characters that are just rendered completely wrong. Air sickness is nature and treatment by René Cruchet, professor of medicine in the University of Bordeaux, André Mounier, naval surgeons, and professor of naval hygiene in the University of Bordeaux. Translated from the French by J. Russell and Earp, M.A., MRCS. Alright, I'm not actually going to read this whole thing because it's 80 pages long, 90 pages long. I want to find that poetry, man. The conquest of the air, besides its numerous dangers, is today resulting in a new disease, the disease we call air sickness. To counter this disease, early airline cabin crews often included a uniformed nurse. Lundy says at least a few European airlines gave out paper sickness bags during the 1920s, which were tossed from open windows once they'd served their purpose. It's caused some problems on the ground too, I would imagine. Some planes had barf bowls or cups, not bags. Mick Oakley, managing editor of the Aviation Historian, told me about a plane fitted with wicker seats. The crew would fit a piece of china into a bamboo hoop beneath each chair. A 1935 issue of Flight magazine describes a scene of flight attendants racing through the cabins with charming little papier-mâché buckets for green-faced passengers. But for the modern leak-proof barf bag that arrived until 1949, an ex-infantryman named Gilmore Shelley Shaldall. I would not have known how to pronounce Shaldall without the middle name Shelley, in quotes. So thanks for that, Gilmore Shelley Shaldall. Started lining paper bags with plastic and brought the notion of the Bemis Bag Company in Minneapolis. His managers were skeptical at first, but changed their minds when a firm secured a contract for air sickness bags with Northwest Airlines. Shaldall, whose son Peter is now the art critic for The New Yorker, would be involved in many other major innovations, including the first passive communications satellite. But none was better known than the airsick bag he helped put in the airplanes. He didn't enjoy being associated with that, said his widow, Charlene, now 97 years old. It's really strange. Yet even in the years before this barf bag spread, barf had become less common. In the 1930s, a correspondent from Flight magazine wrote that air sickness used to be the bane of air travel, but is now comparatively rare. The same magazine asserted that in 1937 that it is practically non-existent these days, as the early flaws in aviation had been mostly fixed. Not quite a decade later, and still 4 years before Shaldall would invent the plastic-lined Emisis bag, an article in Flying magazine suggested that 0.2% of passengers were getting airsick on commercial flights. In 1946, Popular Science gave the number as 0.3%. Compared to those figures from 2000, it looks like nausea rates bottomed out during the Truman presidency and have stayed pretty close to zero ever since the data are so sparse, the method of collecting them so obscure, that no one in the barf bag world takes them as definitive. A few experts in aeromedicine hinted that air sickness has continued to abate, and that improvements in the quality of planes and flight planning might not explain the whole effect. What other factors could be at work? Perhaps we're often less sick because we're more frequent flyers. U.S. airlines carry about 730 million passengers per year, 3 times as many as they did 30 years ago. All that extra time in planes could help to cure a person of her motion sickness. As a general rule, the more time you spend in flight, the less sensitive you'll be to getting sick. One study found that student pilots in the U.S. Navy vomited 6% of all sorties, with rates falling off as cadets can name experience. The same effect could explain why children suffer more from motion sickness than grown-ups do. They've had less exposure, so fewer chances to adapt. The lessening of motion sickness over time could reflect unconscious learning. Sometimes it's believed that motion sickness comes about from your mismatched bodily sensations. Your eyes tell you one thing and your inner ears tell you something else. The human sense of balance takes information from a lot of other senses too. So the feeling of your versus to your head, you might think you're upside down. And the downward pull of your liver, which hangs from your diaphragm like a plumb line. If any of these signals are in conflict, you may start feeling dizzy, nauseated, or even tired and depressed. But given enough input, the brain can adapt to unexpected combinations. It's also possible, I think, that change in sickness rates can start with something deeper. A shift of mindset and perspective on the act of flying. It's not as crazy an idea as it sounds. In the 20th century, doctors sometimes blamed air sickness on the passenger's personality. Couchet and Molinier warned that the psychic overstrain of air travel could lead to neurosis. In 1947, a Columbia University graduate student named Israel Zwerlig wrote a dissertation on the psychology of motion sickness. For one experiment, he spun subjects around while giving them electric shocks. The more anxious they felt while spinning, the more nauseated they became. The follow-up work compared people's tendency to nausea with their scores on Rorschach tests and claimed to find some correlations. Mid-century doctors blamed sickness on 2 distinct causes: motion and emotion. Motion and emotion, like e-books. It's like electronic motion. Later, researchers determined or claimed they'd found that women were more likely to get sick than men, and Chinese women were more susceptible than Westerners. There's even one recent study that reports a link between motion sickness and the strict stage of a woman's menstrual cycle. I bring these up not because they're convincing, I call them sketchy at first glance, rather to suggest that motion sickness has some meaning, be it an ideology that extend beyond the physical phenomenon of turbulence and fetid air. It could be the barf bag caters not only to our bodies but our minds. It's telling that air sickness is an older sibling born not that many years before and now mostly forgotten. Railway sickness was once so widespread as to necessitate a set of prophylactic superstitions. Some said you could keep nausea in check by carrying an Irish potato in your valise or by stuffing newspaper underneath your shirt. Sigmund Freud thought the condition analogous to one produced in even older times by the shaking of a carriage. Motion sickness, he argued, comes from the sexual vibrations that morph into nausea, anxiety, and fatigue by means of repression, which so many childish preferences turn into their opposite. Bus or hired car to Whistler Barfy, Vancouver Forum TripAdvisor. Movie ideas are fine if you're an entrepreneur. Oh, it's giving me results for saying Barry. Thanks, Google. Yahoo Answers. Yeah, come on, Yahoo Answers. You know what I want. Yahoo Answers. Air sick. Bags. Yeah, just give me anything about air sick bags. Oh man, this guy wants to buy barf bags. I work at a club in Hollywood, California, and as we all know, some people cannot hold their liquor at times. I need to know if there's someplace I can purchase airline update. Brown paper bags have been tried, they don't hold up good. It is like trying to hold water or any liquid inside of a bag. guy's trying to sell him brown paper lunch bags. You can do a Yahoo search and find more, but here's one I found, Alibaba.com. Book written on airline barf bags will cost more than a flight. Nick Cave is releasing a book that he wrote entirely on the back of air sickness bags. Air sickness bags, Bagophily.com. Pressurized cabin. Pressurized cabin, and when was it invented? Cabin pressurization is a process in which conditioned air is for an aircraft or spacecraft. Full environment for passengers and crew flying at high altitudes. For aircraft, this air is usually bled off from the gas turbine engines at the compressor stage. For spacecraft, it is carried in high-pressure, often cryogenic tanks. The air is cooled, humidified, and mixed with recirculated air if necessary before it is distributed to the cabin by one or more environmental control systems. The cabin pressure is regulated by the outflow valve. Pressurization becomes necessary at altitudes above 12,500 feet to 14,000 feet above sea level to protect the crew and passengers from the rest of a number of physiological problems caused by the low air pressures above that altitude. It also serves to generally increase passenger comfort and is a regulatory requirement above 8,000 feet. The principal physiological problems are listed below. Hypoxia. The lower partial pressure of oxygen at altitude reduces the alveolar oxygen tension in the lungs and subsequently in the brain, leading to sluggish thinking, dim vision, loss of consciousness, and ultimately death. In some individuals, particularly those with heart or lung disease, symptoms may begin as low as 5,000 feet, although most passengers can tolerate altitudes of 8,000 feet without ill effect. Altitude sickness, hyperventilation, though the body's most common response to hypoxia does help to partially restore the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood, but it also causes carbon dioxide to outgas, raising the blood pH and inducing alkalosis. Decompression sickness. The low partial pressure of gases, principally nitrogen, but including all other gases, may cause dissolved gases in the bloodstream to precipitate out, resulting in a gas embolism or bubbles in the bloodstream. The mechanism is the same as that of compressed air divers on ascent from depth. Symptoms may include the early symptoms of the bends, tiredness, forgetfulness, headache, stroke, thrombosis, subcutaneous itching. That's the worst kind of itching. It's almost as bad as subdermal itching, but rarely the full symptoms thereof. Decompression sickness may also be controlled by a full pressure suit. As for altitude sickness, barotrauma. As the aircraft climbs or descends, passengers may experience discomfort as acute pain as gases trapped within their bodies expand or contract. Most common problems occur with air trapped in the middle ear or paranasal sinuses by blocked eustachian tube or sinuses. Usually these are not severe enough to cause actual trauma, but can result in some soreness in the ear that persists after the flight, and it can exacerbate or precipitate pre-existing medical conditions such as pneumothorax. Pressure inside the cabin is it's technical. Oh, okay, here at my destination. So I'll talk to you next week. The end.